Live from the House of LeMay Makeup and Dressing Room.
Here comes Amber. Stop what you're doing. Here comes Amber. She's just doing what she can. Here comes Amber. Cue the spotlight. Here comes Amber with 2 drinks in her hand. The matriarch of fashion, secrets to her glasses, you can't look away. Ask her, does she do it? There's really nothing to it. She's got that feminine yay. If you have a party, or if you're feeling naughty, call up the House of LeMay. Here comes your favorite gal. Here comes your queen. Here comes your talk of the town. And we're live tonight. The music starts playing. It's time for cabaret on Amber Live tonight.
Ladies and gentlemen, please turn off all cell phones and get ready for your host, Amber LeMay.
Last month, there was a Pride Fest in Denver that featured a family-friendly drag show. During the show, a group of approximately 70 men wearing shirts reading, "Stand to Protect Children," stood blocking the view of the performers for roughly 40 minutes until they were escorted out. I believe that they really wanted to protect the children. They should be standing outside of churches, such as the Camino Church in Charlotte, North Carolina, where Pastor Bobby Price faces 14 charges involving sex crimes against children dating back 2 decades. The children were between ages 9 and 15 years old at the time, police said. And he is already a registered sex offender after a 2014 conviction for an indecent liberties with a minor. Apparently, Jesus doesn't believe in background checks. Who would you trust your child with? A youth pastor or a drag queen? When 11-year-old Charlie Clinton caught this fish and saw the human-like teeth, he thought he had caught a mutant. After consulting a game warden, Charlie found out it was actually a pacu, which is a native of South Africa and a cousin of the piranha. How it got to a small pond in Oklahoma City suburb, no one knows. I'm back. It's Sunday night, so it must be time for Amber Live. And first, I want you to like, share, subscribe. Thank you. And now, what do BO, puke, and explosive diarrhea have in common? Not what you think, but they're all a part of this week's news briefs. Death metal is a form of heavy rock music using lyrics preoccupied with death, suffering, and destruction. And when one thinks of death metal concert, does one think of good hygiene? Well, the band Death Clock, a death metal group that originated as a fictional band from the Adult Swim animated TV series Metalocalypse, showed a video to the audience that urged people to be mindful of their personal hygiene at concerts.
I'd like to take the time to talk about proper concert etiquette. Etiquette? What's that? Well, etiquette is a French word that means how to not act like a stupid asshole. So let's get into it. First off, concert hygiene. You know, when you go to a show and you're standing next to a person who smells like BO and old shoes and shit. Oh, you don't know? Then that person might be you. Take a shower at some point in your life and then come to the show.
A 2021 study revealed that listening to metal music increases body odor by 87%. And many fans are glad the issue is finally being addressed. It's crazy that it's gotten to this point, but at least they did it in the best possible way. One person commented on the video. Another one said, every artist needs to do this in every concert. And someone else said, this is brilliant. And at the show is too late. This needs to be playing during Ticketmaster queues, one suggested. Others said videos like this should be played at all places where many people congregate at once, such as conventions, Disneyland, and even their place of work. Where would you like this message to be spread? Well, airports might be a good place to start, but passengers on 2 recent flights wish that a fellow passenger's BO was the only issue they had to deal with. Instead, 2 passengers on an Air Canada flight from Los Angeles to Montreal were told to sit in poorly cleaned seats that had been covered in vomit. Upon entering the plane, the passengers noted a foul smell. Apparently, on the previous flight, someone had vomited in that area. Air Canada attempted a quick cleanup before boarding, but clearly couldn't do a thorough job. They placed coffee grounds in the seat pouch and sprayed perfume to mask the smell. However, the seat and seatbelt were wet, and there was still visible vomit residue in their area. The flight attendant was apologetic, but explained that the flight was full and there was nothing they could do. As the passengers continued to complain, they were told by the pilot that they could leave the plane and make other arrangements on their own dime, or have security escort them from the plane and placed on a no-fly list. Air Canada has since issued an apology to the passengers, stating they clearly did not receive the standard of care to which they were entitled. But, pun intended, if you think that is bad, a Delta Airbus with 336 passengers took off from Atlanta heading to Spain, but had to land after just 2 hours because, well, we'll let the pilot tell us.
Negative. It's just a biohazard issue. We've had a passenger who had diarrhea all the way through the airplane, so they want us to come back to Atlanta.
Yeah. One passenger stated it was dribbled down the aisle, smelled horrible. Someone else tweeted it was pretty bad. The vanilla-scented disinfectant used on it only made it smell like vanilla shit. Upon returning to Atlanta, the passengers had to wait for another plane to continue their flight to Barcelona. Wow. Give me stinky pits any day. And that's this week's News Briefs. All right. You, Russell, come on in.
Hey, you. I don't love flying, but that would make it really bad, both of those situations.
Oh yeah. Because I know some people, when they smell vomit, they vomit as well.
I don't do that, but that sounds like something that Metalocalypse, see, I can't even say it. Metalocalypse should take care of.
Yes. Do a PSA on that. All right, Russell. I know we've got some new viewers tonight. Tell them the best way to watch Amber Live.
Well, the best way to watch tonight's show is on YouTube, and that's because on YouTube you get to see Amber in all her glory in full HD, and because all your friends are probably in the chat room on YouTube, so you can come over and chat. Amber and I will be there. You can chat with us. It's a lot of fun. We run some polls, have a good time. So we recommend youtube.com/Amber Live. And then after the show, go check out our TikTok, our Instagram, our Facebook, and even our amazing website, amberlive.tv. And if you can't watch Amber, you can always listen to Amber on the podcast that I put out every week of the interviews, and they're called the Amber Live interviews, and you can find them anywhere you find a great podcast. So Amber is out there.
Yes, go to YouTube. I noticed last week there were a lot of people watching on Facebook. That's nice, but a lot of times Facebook cuts out some of our show because of music or whatever other reason. So go over to YouTube and you'll have a better experience watching Amber Live.
YouTube is a great place to watch it.
All right, Russell, go ahead with what else?
Well, you know what I want to talk about, and that's our bustiers. And they are our incredible set of bustiers who help keep this show going, including our super bustier, Larry Lamori, and all the others who have joined him as regular bustiers. And there's that Venmo at RJD Pro that you can use to make a donation to us to help keep the show on the stream. Or you can go to amberlive.tv and look for that donate button. And anything you can give is highly appreciated. It all helps, and it all keeps Amber going.
And some people say, oh, I don't want my name up there. Well, you can be a secret admirer. We've got one of those up there. So you join that group. And Larry, as our super bustier, we've got a story about Larry later on. So stick around for that. You're going to want to see it. But Russell, tell us what's happening in tonight's show.
Well, tonight we have an incredible guest. Now, I knew he was going to be good, but when we recorded this interview, it just blew me away from beginning to end. His name is Mark Segal, and he is the owner and what I want to say, editor, I believe, of the Philly Gay News. But Mark has been around for a few years, and he was at Stonewall when it was raided. He has been a force. A lot of the rights that people enjoy today are because of Mark and the work he's done over the years. So this is really an incredible story.
I learned so much. What I really learned is the power of one person.
Yeah.
Just what he did to change laws in Pennsylvania that affected every other state. It's just amazing. It's a great interview. There's 3 segments to it, so you'll want to see all 3 of them. He's just a charming man and a great historian. So let's watch the first part right now. From being a witness to the Stonewall Riot, to being a founding member of organizations such as the Gay Liberation Front and Gay Youth, to interrupting live television broadcasts to protest their coverage of the gay rights movement, to being the founding member of the Philadelphia Gay News and an award-winning author, to dancing in the White House, Mark Segal has seen and done it all. As former Amber Live guest Bruce Valanche stated, before Will and Grace and Ellen, there was Mark Segal. We have a lot to talk about. Mark, come on in.
Thank you. I'm so glad to see you, and I love those glasses.
Well, thank you. All the better to see you with, Mark. My gosh, I expected an old, decrepit person coming up on the screen after all the things you have done.
I sometimes feel old and decrepit.
Well, let's go back in the Wayback Machine to that June night in 1969 on Christopher Street. Why were you there, and what happened?
Well, like most kids of my age at that time, which was 1969, I was born in 1951. Do the math, and you know that I'm 72 years old. We were invisible as a people. You wouldn't see us on TV. You wouldn't read about us in your newspapers. We weren't on radio. There was no cable TV. So we were the unpolite thing in society. We were all 99.9% of our community was in the closet. So growing up, I was wondering, who was I? Why was I? And what was I about? And there wasn't any place to really look. I mean, if I went to my library, which is about the only place, I might find 5 books. Those 5 books would tell me I'm a criminal. They would tell me I'm insane. They would tell me I'm illegal, that I'm not going to have a job, that at the end of my life I might commit suicide or be killed. I mean, that was the image of gay people. Yeah. And not only that, I also knew that a few miles away from my house in Philadelphia was the Eastern Pennsylvania Psychiatric Institute. Important to know that name. Why? Because that's where they did aversion therapy to make gay people not gay. In other words, legalized torture. So knowing all that, and thinking that since I didn't know anybody else who was like me at 18 years old, it was, why would I stay in a city of 1.6 million when I'm the only one like me? So I went where I thought there might be others, New York. And that was 6 weeks before Stonewall. And what does someone like me who wants to know who they are and wants to meet other people do? Well, you go to a place called Greenwich Village because you hear there's hippies down there and people who aren't norms to society. And at that point, I thought I wasn't a norm in society. So you go down there and you soon discover Christopher Street, which at that time was the mega center of the LGBT community. And you know, I started going there literally late in the afternoon and stayed till early in the morning. And my typical routine was walk up and down Christopher Street, meet my friends, and you become friends with people very quickly. And it was a hangout for kids my age. And so we'd walk up and down, we'd talk about the things that you would normally talk about as a youth, fashions, entertainment, a little politics maybe. But that little politics was always questioning who we were and why society thought of us the way they did. Because quite honestly, we never thought there was anything wrong with us. And we thought maybe it was society that there was something with. And why is that? Why can't we do anything about it? And we didn't know. And at that point, you ran across a few young activists who were asking the same questions and had the same frustrations and who were, like me, marginalized and at that point didn't have any future to look for. So at the end of each night, we would usually end up in a bar called the Stonewall, Why, you ask, the Stonewall? Because it literally was the only place in all of New York that people like me could dance. And what 18-year-old doesn't want to dance their ass off? It also was a place I could hold hands, cuddle, kiss someone that I might love. The only place in the entire city.
Wow.
So that's why we went there. Might have been, a shack, might have been watered down drinks, might have been mafia controlled, illegal. It didn't matter. What most people don't say is that when we went inside there, it was our safe place most of the time. When wasn't it safe? When the police came in and got their payoff. And then the big time, of course, was the night they came in to get their payoff, but didn't just want a payoff. That night they wanted more. What did they do? They wanted to destroy the bar and destroy the people inside of it. And my night that night was very simple. I was standing there with my friends as usual in the back. I could picture it now because I was just there a few weeks ago in the empty part of the Stonewall, not the part that you see open right now, but right next door is the real Stonewall. And they're building that as a visitor center, which opens this coming June. So official Stonewall Visitor Center opens this June on the 55th anniversary of the riots. So that night, standing there in the back of that, listening to my favorite music, which is probably Fifth Dimension, Let the Sun Shine In. And all of a sudden the lights blink. Now remember, I'd only been in New York for 6 weeks. So I say to my friend, what's going on? They say very casually, oh, it's just another raid. And I'm a little alarmed. I don't know what that is. I look like the boy next door. And so at that point, it wasn't quiet. What happened was they bursted through the front doors. They started axing up the bar, throwing bottles, destroying the bar, destroying everything they could, taking people, slamming them up against the wall, calling them everything you could possibly imagine. This went on for quite a while. Then finally, they decided to card people and let them out. I was one of the first because I looked like the kid next door. So that was the violence inside. My reaction to the violence inside during it was happening was just in shock, frightened, in shock, and thinking, gee, someone should call the cops. Yeah. And I realized these were the cops. It also made me realize how low in society are we that the people who are supposed to keep peace in society feel they can do this to us.
You were 18 years old. Did you drop out of high school, or was this after high school?
After high school. I went to New York after high school. My parents thought I was going to college. I was not. If I tell them now, if people ask me today, what college did you graduate? I always say Gay Liberation Front. So eventually they just let us out one by one. I was one of the first. I went across the street and just kept looking at it in bewilderment. Yeah. And as my friends got out, they would join me or join the crowd that was beginning to form there. Anybody that had a decent job or family in New York, the minute they got out, they ran for the subway or got a cab or ran home. They didn't want to stay. The only people who stayed were the marginalized among us, whether it be street kids like me, trans people who then were called drag queens, people who cross-dressed, the Black community. We're the ones who stayed. Why did we stay? I think because we wanted answers. I think that's the only thing I would say. And what precipitated what happened next, I can only tell you, for me, it was the burning sensation of what my family had gone through. It was in my DNA. So at that point, people started the police wanted to get outside. They opened the door. We threw things, whatever we had, whether it was coins in our pockets, a little stone, an empty soda can, whatever. And they closed the doors. They tried that 3 times. It became what people now know as the riot. My reaction during that period of time was, well, it's 1969. Women are fighting for their rights. Blacks are fighting for their rights. Latinos are fighting for their rights. what about us? And then it somehow, and all of this is in an instant, that I can crystallize now. I didn't realize at that point. It was thinking about my grandmother, Fanny Weinstein, and her story. Her story was that as an infant, she lived in what is called the Russian Empire, which was Poland, Ukraine, Russia proper, Belarus. And they had these things called pogroms where they went into Jewish villages and destroyed them. So my grandmother had to leave Russia, came to the United States, and in the 1920s, she was a suffragette. And when I was 13, she took me to my first civil rights march. So I got to march with people like Cecil B. Mill, Robert N.C. Nix, and I got to know them. And then being in Stonewall, my first reaction is, I know people are fighting for the rights. Why can't we be among them? And at about that time, or somewhere during that time, Marty Robinson came up to me, and what I'm known for is he's the one who gave me the chalk and said, go up and down Christian Street and write tomorrow night Stonewall.
That was you.
That was me. Thanks to Marty Robinson.
Tell us who Marty Robinson is.
Marty Robinson was someone who, along with Craig Rodwell, belonged to Mattachine Society of New York. But they were very young, and their ideals of what we should be and how we should fight for our rights were very different from Mattachine. Mattachine thought we should be very respectful and quiet and, wear suits and ties, and women had to wear dress. No drag queens need apply. Drag queens are my friends. Yeah. And I didn't believe in any form of discrimination. So Marty and Craig on his own, each separately, decided to create their own little organizations that were going to do more. Craig started a youth organization, and Marty started what he called the Action Group, which I think said, and I was one of the 4 members of that. There were only 4 of us, and we didn't last very long. But so that's why Marty came up to me in the crowd, because I was the only one there that was part of the Action Group, and said, this is what you can do. This will spur action. This will start movement. And from that, and I'd say from those actions that night, from the ashes of Stonewall, came Gay Liberation Front. And we all joined that in one way, shape, or form. And Gay Liberation Front is what changed the world to where we are today.
Amazing. We've got some pictures. Russell, show us some pictures here. And if you would please tell us, Mark, explain these pictures.
Okay. So this is one of my favorite pictures. So I wrote a memoir called "And Then I Danced, Traveling the Road to LGBT Equality." Came out about 4 years ago. At that time, I had no pictures whatsoever of that first year in New York from 69 to 70, basically the year from Stonewall to the first Pride. In that year, we organized and did things for the first time that had never been done before. This is a demonstration against NYU because of their treatment of the LGBT community. And that's me on the right with my arm up. That's my left hand. And next to me is my good friend Jerry Hughes, another member of Gay Liberation Front. And behind us with the big handbag is Sylvia Rivera, another member of Gay Liberation Front. And we're marching up 8th Street towards Weinstein Hall at NYU, which later became, and from that march came a sit-in, the Weinstein Hall sit-in, which was the first LGBT sit-in demonstration ever.
Were you communicating with your family back in Philadelphia during this?
That is a great question. So each of us in Gay Liberation Front had a committee or whatever we were doing, or we were part of a committee. I created the Gay Youth Committee, or cell as we called it then. And I was president of Gay Youth New York. And so I had a hotline. The hotline was in my apartment, and people would call, and they would either be thinking of suicide or wanting to come out to their parents or friend, and I would advise them. All that time, I had not come out to my own parents. So eventually, I called my parents, being very brave as I am. I called my parents to tell them that I was gay. Phone rang. My father answered the phone. I said, "Dad, I have to tell you something." He asked, "What?" I said, "I'm gay." And his response was, "I knew that already. Here, speak to your mother." Absolutely surprised to hear that. I was shocked. I told my mother, and my mother's reaction to that was somewhat different. Long silence. And then she finally came back and said, "You're my son. I love you. But I'm worried about you in my old age, in your old age." She was alive today. I get to say to her, "Hey, Mom, I'm in my old age. I'm very happy. And guess what, Mom? I'm happily married."
Russell, show another picture. Oh, that's one of your messages.
Yeah. That's me being arrested outside Independence Hall when I handcuffed myself to the Liberty Bell.
Really? What became of that? You handcuffing yourself?
Went to trial for disturbing the peace and several other little things. And I'm sure they found me guilty and I was given a fine of some sort. But, you know, I got a ride in what we used to call paddy wagons. We no longer call them that. And got a nickel ride, which is when you're put in the wagon, they handcuff you behind your back, but don't handcuff you to anywhere else. So, and they go over every single pothole they can go on. So you're bounced around the wagon, and they take a trip for a few miles. And so by the time you get to the police station, you're pretty bruised up.
Oh my! Next picture.
That is either the first or second year. Oh no, this is really a famous picture. Again, one I didn't have when I wrote the book. This is the first march that we created. Primarily, Marty Robinson and Martha Shelley organized this march. It was from Washington Square Park to Stonewall, and it was 1 month, the exact date, 1 month after Stonewall Riot. And I'm all the way over on the right-hand side, my hand covering my face. That's what I looked like at Stonewall.
Next picture.
This is 1973. This is the Phil Donahue show. And the gentleman obviously, the gentleman to my right is Phil Donahue. The one to my left is representing the association, the American Association of Psychiatrists, APA. Yeah. American Psychiatric Association, thank you. And from that debate and many others, eventually that year, the American Psychiatric Association devoted to take homosexuality out of the nomenclature. So in one day, we went from insanity to sane.
I grew up in the Midwest, and I watched Phil Donahue because he was broadcasting from Dayton, Ohio at the time. Did you go to Dayton?
That's where that show is done. That show is done from Dayton.
What were your impressions of Phil Donahue?
Oh, wonderful. Well, okay, I did Donahue show 3 different times. He and I had a good rapport. And when I first did it, I didn't know it was 1971, I believe. And I didn't know quite, no one had done a syndicate, no one out LGBT person had done a syndicated talk show before. And I wasn't quite sure how it was going to go. And his reaction to me was, before the show, "Mark, I have an audience. They're mostly made up of Bible thumpers. You're going to get a lot of questions, and they're not going to like you. Are you able?" And I said, "Yep, my job in my mind." So this is where I really came up with the idea of visibility is the most important thing in the world. And so I didn't mind if people didn't like me. That didn't matter. I was there for the cause, And what I meant by the cause was that if I'm visible, that means people are to go home and they're to discuss the issue. They normally don't do that. We were, before that point, a people you never talked about in polite company. No. My goal was to make people talk about us. So hate me all you want. I'm getting you to talk about us. That's my job. And I took it literally as a job.
Well, thank you so much for talking with us. We've got so much more to talk to. We're going to take a short break here, but we're going to be back with Mark Segal because we got a lot more to talk about. Be right back. Can you imagine being there at Stonewall the night of the riot and then going out and encouraging others to join? What a story. Russell, come in.
Hey, oh my goodness. And there's so much more.
Oh yeah, I mean that's a story of a lifetime right there. But he's got multiple stories of lifetimes.
Yeah.
It's just really good.
Yeah.
And we got the Boog and Shoog, my Altar-cations coming up, and one more plug.
Plug for the bustiers. We need your help to keep Amber going. There are bills every month that I have to pay. Use that Venmo at RJD Pro to become a bustier. You can have your name up there, or if you'd like, let me know. You can be a secret admirer as well, or go to amberlive.tv and use the donate button, and you can donate to Amber using a credit card there. The other way you can always help is by going to our store at amberlive.tv and take a look at all the amazing products. We're putting up new ones all the time. Our designers are working hard to get you great stuff, so go check that out as well.
All right, Russell. Let's go to part 2 of that interview. All right, we're back with Mark Segal. Fascinating first segment. Now, you did all this activism. What were you doing for money? How did you survive?
There's a line from a Tennessee Williams show called "I lived off the friendship of the generosity of my friends."
Yes.
But when that became almost impossible, my parents also sent me some money, and I also was a taxi cab driver.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
I have a hack license.
Still?
I've renewed it many years, but yeah, I was a New York City cab driver. Talk about terrifying. Imagine if I was your cab driver.
Well, I bet you could write a book about your stories from that too.
That would be a good chapter. It was amazing. Yeah.
All right. As you moved into the 70s and 80s, you became more action oriented. You really wanted to get your word out to the public. And one of those was interrupting live broadcasts. Russell, roll this clip.
CBS News Convention Headquarters in Miami Beach. This is the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite and Charles.
We had some interesting impromptu moments on the evening news. Once, a couple of young men who said they were journalism students wanted to see the broadcast, so we let them stand in back of the studio, back of the cameras there. Suddenly, they broke from the background and they ran in front of the cameras.
Kissinger is in London now. CBS is closed.
Frankly, I was a little frightened at first. I didn't know if they might have guns or knives. I didn't know what was going on.
Well, rather interesting development in the studio here. A protest demonstration right in the middle of CBS News studio.
Over the years, I've kept in touch with one of those young men. His name's Mark Segal. Brilliant young fellow. He operates a gay newspaper in Philadelphia and very successful.
Wow. Not only did you do that, but he became an acquaintance and a correspondent with you. Tell us how that came about.
Well, the whole idea of the disruption of the show was part of what I just mentioned about visibility. In Gay Liberation Front from 69, 71, we, for the first time, demonstrated outside police headquarters, demonstrated against media, demonstrated against almost anybody. But those demonstrations were only seen by a few thousand people, maybe a few hundred, few thousand, have very little impact. And I realized very quickly that if we're going to make a dent in society, we have to reach out to society. They have to find out about us. And there's 200 million people in America at that point, or 180, I think it was, 180 million people in America at that point. How many of them were discussing us? I needed to get them to talk about us. That was my belief. My belief is visibility brings discussion, discussion brings education, education will eventually bring equality. So I wrote a letter to CBS saying, hey, we're not coming and talking about the fact that you censor LGBT people. There's nothing on your news about us. You have no programming about us. Let's talk about it. Of course, they didn't reply, and I tried like 3 times. So that was so then I decided, okay, they're not going to talk to us. We're going to talk to them. After all, the airwaves are public, aren't they? They get license from the FCC. So on that December night in 1973, Walter was reading the news, and I stuck between him and the camera, sat on his desk, so the camera could only see me. Put the sign in front of the camera. The CBS network went blank for 7 minutes while they rustled me to the floor, wrapped me in wires and whatever. Hard to remember all that, quite honestly. And when they came back on, Walter did a little message. Well, we had a demonstration here. Imagine what 7 minutes of network TV would cost today. But here's another better figure. Walter Cronkite was the most trusted man in America. And if you got your news those days, remember, there was no internet. There was nothing like this. We weren't mentioned in newspapers, magazines. If you got your news, you got it from Walter Cronkite. He had 60 million people watching that broadcast. For the first time, 60 million people saw an out gay man talking about gay rights. That was the first time ever. So I got arrested. We had a trial. During the trial,
what was your charge? What did they charge you with?
Oh, I got charged with breaking the Federal Communications Act, which was 10-year imprisonment and $10,000 fine. And they did prosecute, and we went to court. And during the break in the trial, I'm talking to my lawyer, and I feel a tap on my shoulder. I turn around, and the gentleman says, "You must be Mark Segal." I looked at him and said, "You must be Walter Cronkite." And he then said, without acknowledging anything, his next line was, "Why did you do what you did?" And I said, "Because your show is biased and censors LGBT people." And he looked at me in a very strange way, and I just looked at him. I said, he took umbrage. And I said, "If I can prove it to you, will you change it?" And he just stood there, no comment. I could just, the image of Walter was in.
Oh my gosh.
And so I said, you ran a story last week on International Women's Year being proclaimed and 5,000 people walking down 6th Avenue. He said, "Well, that was news." I said, "I agree with you, it was. But why didn't you cover Gay Pride Day when the same amount of LGBT people ran down the same street in June?" Silence. I said, "Last week, again, you did your second story. You talked about, for the third time in a row, New York City Council had refused to pass the gay rights ordinance." He said, "Don't you think that was news? We're talking about gay issues." I said, "Why didn't you mention the 26 other cities that have passed gay rights laws?" That's a bias. He turned around, went back into the courtroom. Next up, the prosecution called Walter Cronkite as a witness. First question to him was, when Mr. Segal trespassed into your studio, and he said, "Excuse me." He said, "He didn't trespass. We invited them in."
Oh my. Oh my. I'm getting verklempt just thinking about that.
But the better part was the following week, if you came back from a commercial or coming back after the first commercial, you would see him standing in a mapping line, say standing, this is old tech, remember, with a pointer pointing out cities that have passed gay rights ordinances. Remember, he never gave an answer, but that was the answer. And soon after that, I went to an event, I don't remember which, and I passed him in the hallway, and he turned around and said, "Mark," which shocked me. And we talked for a few minutes, and he gave me his card and said, "Next time you're in New York, give me a call. We'll have lunch or dinner." And we did. And we became friends. And the reason Philadelphia Gay News is the nation's most pluralistically awarded LGBT media is because my mentor was Walter Cronkite, who I was able to call asking for any advice I needed. And that's also why in that clip you just showed, he takes pride in saying that, because he feels that the paper is as good as it felt, that the paper was as good as it was because he helped mentor it. And that was kept until his death. I never talked about that until he died. Until he did his TV sign off. Then I was able to talk about it. Because when you have a friend like Walter, you don't boast about it. And I didn't know how comfortable you would be on that. But I mean, there's an interview I did with Walter, which I did 2 years before his death, 2 or 3 years before his death, at one of our lunches. And I said, you know, Walter, I've never ever done an interview with you in all this time. Would you mind if I did one? And he said, yeah. So I took out the tape recorder and we did it at the table. I transcribed it when I got back, and God, this had to be 2006, 2004, maybe. After transcribing it, when you have Walter as a friend, you feel protective. I wouldn't run the interview because the interview talked about how much he was for gays in the military. The interview talked about how much he supported gay marriage. And I thought it was way ahead of its time, and I didn't publish it. Upon his death in 2009, I published it.
What were some of the other programs that you trespassed?
The Today Show, where Barbara Walters became the first newscaster, national network newscaster, to talk about a gay demonstration, because after the disruption, I was being held out in the hall by police, and she came outside and said, "I want to know why you did what you did." And I gave her the whole story, and she went, and she's taking notes, and as she's taking notes, her producer came outside and says, "You're on, get in there." And she said, "Not until I get this story." And so she went back in and explained why we did what we did, and talked about what we thought, why homosexuals thought about networks as censoring and being biased on LGBT issues. First time that ever got done. That was November of 1973. The Tonight Show, the Mike Douglas Show, a local news show here in Philadelphia.
I can't believe that by this time your picture wasn't on every studio door saying, "Do not let this person in."
You are right. We got to that point. Where Variety did a article about all of this happening, and stating very simply that I caused, what was it? Up to that point, $700,000 in network tape delays. I wasn't counting money. I didn't have the slightest idea it was costing them anything, not the slightest. So at that point, the network started discussing with LGBT organizations how they could do better treatment. This is long before the days of GLAAD.
All right, we've got some more pictures, Russell. Let's see some more pictures. Oh, this is
the Today Show. That's right, but I don't even remember his name. But that's me. Notice by this point I have long hair, the look, and mustache. Notice that I'm totally different from that picture in 1970 or 69.
Well, the times were changing. What's this?
Gay talk. So somewhere along the line, an owner of a radio station came to me and said, in our city there are, in every major city in America, there are news stations where they do not, or radio stations where they do nothing but talk shows, and and some of them are even all news all the time. And so he said, we want to do a talk variety show, but we thought, wouldn't it be interesting to have the first gay talk show? And so we wanted you to host that. So for about 2 years, I hosted a weekly LGBT radio show, and I had like the mayors of their city on, and the governor of Pennsylvania, and I also had, who was that horrible guy? Morton Downey Jr. Am I getting that right?
Yes.
Yeah. He had a talk show where he really was homophobic, and before Rush Limbaugh and all those guys, he was the daddy of that genre.
Yeah.
And he came on my show, and fascinating. But it was interesting. That's me all the way to right in 1970, 71. Notice the hairs the mustache hasn't gotten there yet. The hair hasn't gotten there. And you can tell by the clothes I have that I don't have very much money, obviously. And this is a demonstration outside Time Life, because they wouldn't do any LGBT news stories. Time Life was a news magazine that was a weekly in the United States at that point. This is Stonewall 50. And that's me all the way on the right. Next, this is at the Stonewall 50 Gala concert that was held at Brooklyn's, what is the Brooklyn Stadium? Barclays Center. Yeah, so that's myself, Mark Horn, Carla J, all Gay Liberation Front members, along with Whoopi Goldberg. And strangely enough, I thought this was all we were doing, but when they started the show, 18,000 people in that stadium. When they started the show, Whoopi got on as the MC, and the first thing she did was introduce the members of Gay Liberation Front and asked us to come up on stage with her. And we got a standing ovation from 18,000 people. That was, I got chills just speaking about it. It was,
I bet.
So how could you ever expect that 50 years ago? We had no idea. That is obviously Elton John. On July 4th, 2005, City of Philadelphia allowed me to take over its biggest day, July 4th, and do a concert with Elton John on the Philadelphia Parkway for about 200,000 people. And the whole concept was to make it an AIDS awareness concert. And it was broadcast live. And the opening for the concert was my good friend, Walter Cronkite.
That is so cool.
Yeah. This is, I think, 2017, 2 years before the 50th anniversary. And we decided those people of us who were the original marchers in the first Gay Pride in 1970, which was officially called Christopher Street Gay Liberation Day, a march and gay in, to march once again with a banner. That's the banner. And in that group is, you see Jerry Hughes with the sunglasses. I'm there over there. That's Dennis. That's Martha Shelley holding the other end. Rick Landsman holding one end of it as well. And all of us behind it.
And one more picture. Who's that guy?
That is 2019. That is Joe Biden. And we are literally inside Stonewall during Stonewall 50. And we met, talked a little. I've seen him since a couple of times. And he also was very helpful in helping us create the nation's first LGBT-friendly senior affordable housing apartment buildings, which was done under the Obama Biden administration and funded at $19.8 million. And we're about ready to celebrate the 10th anniversary of that coming up in February.
In your introduction, I mentioned that you danced at the White House. Tell me about that.
Well, let's see. I don't even remember the year anymore. I could look up on my wall of memories and probably tell you. But when I was working with the Office of Vice President and President to create that housing project for affordable seniors. And I was harassing them to death, to no end. So there was going to, and I'm a member of the media, so every year the White House has media Christmas receptions. And so one year I got an invitation from the president to come to the reception. And it's an event where you get to dance. And so I asked if it was okay to bring my future husband, Jason, with me. And that's where I got the title for my book. And then I dance. You look on the cover of the book, you see me being arrested. And never would that person being arrested ever expect that the president of the United States would invite him to bring his husband to the White House to dance. Inconceivable. Inconceivable.
You've got great stories, Mark, and we've got one more segment to hear some more. Thank you so much. We'll be right back. But wait, there's another segment of more great stories from Mark Segal. Stick around. But first, Altar-cations. Altar-cations is our response to the right wing's continuing harassment, both legally and physically, toward the drag and trans communities by claiming we are the groomers and pedophiles, when time and time again it's members of the religious communities being charged with such heinous acts. Let's look at Aaron Doyle Murching, a former kindergarten teacher and senior pastor at a North Carolina church. He was arrested and charged last month with 3 counts of third-degree sexual exploitation of a minor. By North Carolina law, third-degree sexual exploitation of a minor is most commonly used when someone is in possession of material that contains a visual depiction of a minor engaging in sexual activity. 3 days later, he was arrested again on 10 counts of indecent liberties with a minor and given a $50,000 secured bond. Good grief indeed. Kelly Garrett Ivy, a youth volunteer at the Rock Springs megachurch in Georgia, is accused of trying to sell a teenage girl on the dark web. The arrest report said Ivy attempted to sell information about a 16-year-old female, home address, as well as places she regularly attends on the dark web in order for her to be abducted, assaulted, or otherwise harmed. The Reverend Nathan Brooks, a priest in the Syracuse, New York diocese, has been charged with forcibly touching a minor over several years. Brooks was charged with forcible touching, endangering the welfare of a child, and third-degree sex abuse. All misdemeanors, deputies said. The diocese agreed to pay $100 million to sex abuse survivors as part of a bankruptcy settlement. And yet, it's the drag queens that they continually attack. And that's this week's Altar-cations. And now, let's wrap up our conversation with Mark Segal. We're back with Mark Segal, and we have some great things to talk about still. So, after all the activism, I know you're still consider yourself an activist. You created the Philadelphia Gay News. Tell me about that.
Well, it's sort of amazing how that came about because it has to do with not just Philadelphia, but Pennsylvania as a whole. So people often ask me, I'm going in tangent. If you don't like the tangent, let me know. People often ask me what happened after the Walter Cronkite zap. What did it do? What did it change? And the things that happened after that was, well, all of a sudden, all these talk shows started inviting me on to talk about gay issues because who is that guy who did that thing? What the heck? I was sensationalistic, if you would be. I was fodder for talk. That opened up all the talk shows to this day. You see, the LGBT subjects are always on. So, which again brings visibility, which brings education, which brings equality. So I'm thrilled. It also brings the fact that you have gay characters now on TV. I could turn on almost any network and there'll be a gay character. There'll be either a gay newsman, weather person, sports person, or gay character on TV. And that still gives me tears to this day when I see that, to be very honest. So I'm very happy about that. So a few years ago, I was speaking at the Illinois Holocaust Museum, and they had the Stonewall Rising exhibit that they were showing. And part of that exhibit was they show that tape that you showed. And so the woman asked me to go take a tour of people through the exhibit. And when I got to that, she wanted to know, what did that lead to? And I told her what I just told you. And then she says, no. What else did it lead to? She already realized or knew, but she wanted to make me realize, which was what a gift that was. And I said, well, one thing I did was I wrote to the governor of Pennsylvania and said, I would like to meet with you. Now, in that time, which was 1973, no governor had ever met with a gay activist. That was political suicide. So the governor's office called me back and they said, well, we'll agree to a meeting, but it has to be kept quiet. I was shocked. I really was. I didn't expect to get a response. So we met with then Governor Milton Schaap, and we're in a room, and he asked what are the things we want. And I said, well, we could do a commission, we could do an executive order, we could do gay pride. I'm asking for everything and anything I could think of, thinking, I'm not going to get any of this, but you might as well go for the gold ring anyway. And he says, well, let me give to my advisors and we'll see what we can do. And then as we're getting ready to leave, he says, let me show you out. And he puts his arm around me and his press secretary opens the doors and there is the full Pennsylvania press corps taking pictures. And he slaps me on the back and he said, by the way, I caught you on the Cronkite show. That content show, as I said, visibility leads to other things, led to the governor of Pennsylvania. Now, that governor, Milton Schaap, became the first governor in the country to issue an executive order stating that state employees could not discriminate on the basis of being LGBT. So you could be employed by the state of Pennsylvania. He then created the first commission to look at the problems that LGBT citizens were having in the state of Pennsylvania. It was called the Commission on Sexual Minorities. He then created liaisons to each and every department in the state. So therefore, every commission today, governmental commission, LGBT government commission, or every governmental LGBT liaison that exists today, stand on the shoulders of Governor Schaap, or on the shoulders of Walter Cronkite, or on, it's sort of amazing. And that includes all the liaisons and commissions that President Biden has appointed. So that's
the story.
Yeah. And so I like to give those people credit. That's why I want to tell that piece of story.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Because Schaap never gets credit for creating something that is historic in its nature that is still followed through today.
And that was copied by many other states.
Correct. It still is. I mean, there are several LGBT commissions that are federal thanks to appointment by President Biden.
All right, so tell me about the Philadelphia Gay News.
Philadelphia Gay News is America's most award-winning journalistic media. In fact, we are going to be presented with the Legacy Award this year by the National Lesbian and Gay Journalists Association for 47 years, 53 years in our business of reporting, all of which started when I was touring the state for the Pittsburgh Gay News, which no longer exists. But we're sort of like the only activist LGBT publication existing due to its founder, me. I like to say we're the only paper that still have the spirit of Stonewall. We do features that other people are afraid to deal with. We were doing trans articles and drag articles long before any other LGBT media in the country. We did them proudly. We stood for those community. We've done a 15-year investigation into the death of a Black trans woman, which we've won awards from various organizations. We've done stories on homeless. We've had reporters sleep in parks with homeless youth. We did one of the earliest pieces we did that was somewhat showed that we were different than anybody else. We did a story on lesbian nuns. We did our story on LGBT liaisons in government, and guess what? They were only here in Pennsylvania. They were nowhere else in our early days. So that was a breakthrough in his story. We interviewed governors, presidents, vice presidents. They've all appeared. I mean, Hillary Clinton did an op-ed for us at one time. So we're a newspaper of a little different than most others.
Are you still in print?
Oh, we are in print and online. If you're watching this online now, you can go to E like electronic, PGN, which stands for Philadelphia Gay News. So that's epgn.com. And you'll see our full editions of the papers there.
So what's the status of gay journalism? The reason I asked if you were still printed, because some don't anymore. It's all online. Same thing with gay magazines and periodicals. So what's the status?
Well, the change for gay journalism is similar to mainstream journalism right now. We are all going through a change, and that includes print, radio, and also television. I can tell you what those changes are and make you be able to see them really easy. All you have to do is go to your local newscast at 6 o'clock or 6:30, local, not national, and you will notice that the weather is sponsored by the sports segment is sponsored by, and then you'll find a personality piece, which is sponsored by either the energy company or a car company. Well, that's the future of journalism. It's called sponsored and journalism or branded content. And that's one of the areas we're doing. So, for instance, one of the things we've done is we did something with AARP, which was they wanted us to write stories on LGBT seniors. So we said, okay, we will do that, but we have to pay our people. So will you pay our freelancers for that? Will you give? And they were glad to do that. So that helps us do that. The other way we do it is with collaborations. And we're in collaboration on a website called News Is Out, NEWSISOUT, newsisout.com, which is a collaboration of 5 of the legacy LGBT publications in the country, which is us, Dallas Voice, Washington Blade, Windy City Times, and I'm missing somebody. So forgive me.
All right. So you're still in print. What's your role with the paper right now?
I'm the publisher, which means I run 2 divisions, or 3, I guess. One of which is the advertising department. The other is the editorial department. And the third, I guess, would be the business department, which is circulation and distribution and office maintenance and what have you.
Your thoughts on what's going on in the country with the anti-gay, anti-trans, anti-drag communities out there? What's happening and how can we stop it?
Well, I think it's not surprising. It is a lot of people are afraid to use the word. It's a backlash, and they should use that word. Because if you can only understand what's happening now if you know your history, and it's not the first backlash against our community. And when does it happen? It always happens when we're having success. Why does it happen? Same reason it happens against the Black community, Latino community, or women, because the status quo are afraid that they're losing some form of power. They don't want to share power with themselves. So that's why the privileged want to remain privileged. And so basically, they're frightened of us. So here's the interesting aspect about this backlash. It's basically against trans community, drag and trans, I should say. That's where the most of it is aimed at. And I think if you look at our past, you can figure out why it is. Because they used to villainize the gay and lesbian community. They can't do that anymore. We become so visual. We're visible. They don't know or haven't seen the trans community and are uneducated on that issue. So it's easy to bash. Therefore, they're using the trans community to bash all of us. So we have to support our trans brothers and sisters. It's that simple.
They have seen the trans community. They just don't realize they've seen the trans community.
Exactly. And it's up to the trans community to decide how they want to be visible. And we need to support them with that. But as you know, I'm a supporter of visibility.
What's your next project? What's your big thing coming up?
My next project. Well, I'm working with the Stonewall Visitor Center, which opens in June, since I'm a Stonewall pioneer. And that's sort of been a fun project. I'm going to be speaking at Out and Equal in, of all places, Orlando. Hey, I didn't pick where the convention site is. I'll be speaking at the National Lesbian and Gay Journalists Association convention. And I have several, I go out and I do these speeches for people who want to hear about our history. So I usually, during October's LGBT History Month, a lot of corporations have me come out, or LGBT organization, and same thing with Pride Month. So June and October, I'm totally crazed.
Well, Mark, by the way, I noticed that you said you did go to college, but on one of your websites, it listed PhD. Tell me about that.
Oh, professional homosexual doctorate.
I thought the H could have been for humor as well.
I like that better. I'm going to use that instead.
Send me my royalty. Mark Segal, thank you so much for talking. Fascinating story. Oh my gosh, we could talk for hours more, and we're going to talk again. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. It's wonderful being with you.
Thank you. I've done some very interesting, great interviews over the past 3.5 years, but that ranks right up there with one of my best and favorites. Thank you, Mark, very much. And I want to thank Rocco for showing up again. Rocco, come on in.
Hey, everybody, it's me, Rocco, in case you didn't figure that part out. So listen, I've been on this dating site, and all I see is these women asking questions like, hey, do you like toys? I'm like, yeah, I like toys. Of course I like toys. And I figured, let me see what kind of toys I like. All right? Now this one here is called Tiki Toss. head to head. You got to get the ring on these things. So let's see what I can do. I'm doing it backwards for you guys. This is the kind of toys they're talking about, right? I mean, they said something about a ring for a rooster, I guess. I don't know. This is stupid. You guys are gonna hang out until I make this. You got that? Turn it around. Disadvantage Rocco. The hell? Come on, cheer me on. Yay! I don't know what the hell's going on here. It's supposed to swing and then go on this thing. And then you go, hey, I got a point. I got a point to make too. This is dumb. But I got another game that's a lot of fun. This is called Kinetic or Magic Sand. I don't know. I don't remember. The box is over there. I'm not looking at it. Oh, it's Kinetic Sand. I did see the box. So you dump it out of the bag and look at it. It's like Play-Doh met slime or something, you know? It's kind of fun. So you just do this and you make some weird things out of it. I don't really know the point of it either, but look, there it is. Kinetic Sand. You know, if this was something like Nerds or Sweet Tarts and you could eat it, then it would be magic. I'd like that. I'd make it disappear so fast. Ah! So, look, I can stuff. I know I'm going long. Shut up. I'm gonna stuff this into a ball, and then I'm gonna do something else. Oh yeah, put this part on. Stuff it into a ball, do this, and then you pull it apart, and voila, a snowball or a sandball from hell. You throw this at somebody, they're gonna be like, what the hell did you do? I threw a kinetic sand at you, that's what I did. So anyway, if you're on a dating site and they ask you if you like toys, these are 2 toys to remember because they're a lot of fun except for that ring thing. I don't know what the hell's up with that. But then if they ever ask about, do you wear a ring? You say, it's not my thing. But the kinetic sand, you gotta believe, baby. So anyway, I'll talk to you guys next week because obviously I got so much to say. All right? Bye.
Love that Rocco.
Of that Rocco. Well, earlier in the show, when Russell was showing the list of the bustiers, it was listed Super Bustier Larry Lamoureux. We've known Larry for over 25 years, and he's just been such a good friend. And, well, we've got some pictures to show of Larry. This is the early days when we first got to know him. He loved his music. Yes, he did. And then we have, that's him down in Provincetown, one of the years that he visited down there. And then this was, we did a Disney show, LeMay's Do Disney. And that was Marguerite LeMay there being Cruella de Vil. And that was Larry on the right as one of the Dalmatians. And he did a little routine by clapping his hands and doing a little dance. He had a great time doing that. And there he is on a pride parade here in Burlington. He was driving his car. Larry loved cars. He was the type of guy, if you were riding with him in a car at night, if a car was coming at you from 3 miles away, he could tell you what kind of car that was. It was amazing. He really loved his cars. And there he is recently. That's a picture Russell took of Larry when Russell visited Larry recently. Well, Larry has been fighting cancer for the past 4 or 5 years, and it's been tough, but he fought so hard, and with always a smile and a chuckle, never woe is me. But he passed away this week, and while it wasn't a surprise, it really hit us hard because he's such a great guy. Over the past 3 years during COVID, he would join us on our game nights on Saturday night. A bunch of us get together. And some nights he couldn't talk very well because of his throat. Other nights he was tired, but he always tried to just come on and say hi and let us know he was doing okay. Well, he's free now of his pain, but we'll think about him often. So thank you very much, Larry, for all your love, support, and for being a super bustier too. That's tonight's show. I want to thank again Mark Segal for being a fantastic guest. I want to thank Russell for all the work he does for this. Boog and Shoog is coming up, so Let's see what they have this week. See you next week.
Oh, I've been to... Let me do that again. I mean, it could be bad, but not that bad. Oh, I've been to Georgia and California and anywhere I could run. Took the hand of a preacher man and we made love in the sun.
He'll soon be on Altar-cations.
But I ran out of places and friendly faces because I had to be free. I've been to paradise, but I've never been to me.
Maybe you should have stayed there.
Dick.